Would you mind speaking, just so that everyone can hear you? You'll have to press the button for it to come, thank you.
Is that it? Okay, we're asking that our vacant pens be replaced. That's the first thing listed. The second thing that Mr. Josh Todd is going to be our assistant director. We have not had one in the past. We're going to create a position and give up one of our other pens right now that's not full. So we're working with the state personnel board on that right now. So I've discussed it with William, and that's somewhat of a continuing process that we're trying to get completed right now, mid-year, basically, and then carry that over into the next year.
Okay.
The other thing we're asking for is over the current year's budget is $500,000. I put that in our appropriation request last August. That is for a grant that we have at Flint Creek Water Park, and this will allow us to pay for that grant, and then we will be reimbursed that amount, but of course we won't be given the authority back. So those are basically the three things that we're asking in our budget for the year.
Give us just a moment to allow the committee members to read through. We may have a question. Just
Sure.
Yes, I think so. They're still downstairs.
Are there any questions by any subcommittee members?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
The last statement, you said you were asking for monies in what area?
$500,000 in our capital outlay for a horse trail that we're building at Flint Creek. We have a grant for that. The $500,000 grant, of which we'll pay 20%, and then we'll be reimbursed the 80%. So we need the money up front to pay. We'll have to pay all the expenditures up front, and then we'll be reimbursed the $400,000. That's correct. We're basically doing it over 2 years. We've paid part of it out of the current year's budget, and then we'll finish it next year, next fiscal year. So we'll need the majority of the money in our next fiscal year that starts in July. We have not.
How many counties participate?
10. We originally had 15 and had 5 withdraw.
Okay. Other questions? Senator Williams, did you have anything?
It goes into our checking account, but we have to pay for it. Basically, we're asking for authority to spend that money. So, sure.
Yes, sir.
We have 10 counties that are currently in our district.
What are the 10 counties?
Okay, we have Lauderdale, Newton, Clark, Jones, Covington, Smith, Wayne, I said Clark, Covington County, George County, Greene County, and Stone County. Okay, Forest, Lamar, Jasper, Perry, and Jackson.
Perry and Jackson are not out as of this date. We're in court with them. We are still working with them, hoping they're going to reinstate and come back. We're working with them. The other 3 are officially out. But those 2 are still, in fact, I have a meeting at 7:30 in the morning with Jackson County, meeting with the supervisor to see if we can negotiate something for them to stay in. So as not not totally out, but Perry County's pretty well out.
Yes, please.
Not too much. What was the reason for them getting out?
I think it was mainly money, their budget problems.
They having budget problems. But now, on the other hand, we got some other counties that's outside our district, for your information, that are asking about maybe joining, who were part of the Pearl River Basin at one time. Now they're asking maybe a possibility of joining Pat Harrison, and we can provide those services to them. We may gain as many back or more, and then some of them may return.
Thank you. And I assume that you've got the legislative authority to enter into these agreements with counties without any change to a statute? Okay.
We're working on that too. Everything's important to the law.
Well, I was truly asking because I don't know the answer to that, and I was going to offer, if you need our assistance to give you a little more flexibility, then please speak to me about that.
We will do
Okay.
that and keep you informed.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further questions? Well, we will take the information that you have presented under advisement, as we always do when we're crafting your budget, and if there are follow-up questions, one of us will be in touch with you.
Okay, great. Be available.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Department of Transportation will be next. Please come right on up. How are you? Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you. How are you? You have a good Christmas?
Give them another opportunity.
All right, Director White, thank you so much for joining and bringing your staff with you today.
Thank you very much for having us, Madam Chairman. I appreciate it. You ready for me to
You
begin?
may proceed. Yes, sir.
So in your package you've got, if you would, I'd like to reference first this, I guess you'd call it the graph. It deals with the federal money. I thought it would be helpful to speak a little bit about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and what it is, and probably more importantly, what it's not. Every 5 years, Congress reauthorizes the Federal Highway Administration, and that's the previous 5 years was done under the FAST Act. Mississippi's portion of the federal funds that were made available for us was somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.6 billion over those 5 years. And you'll see that that's represented on the left side in the red or orange, whatever. I'm halfway colorblind, so, but you can tell which one I'm talking about here. The top portion is the federal money that begins with $490 million, $497, $509, $522. The second paragraph below you'll see is the money that was used as the state match that was put up in order to receive those federal dollars for the various projects. So you'll see that in the previous authorization, MDOT received roughly $2.6 billion in federal funds that were made available for our projects, which cost us around a little better than $541 million over that same period of time in order to use the money. When the debate over this Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act started up, I think that there was some, by accident, some bad information that got out that would lead people, especially with relation to the previous economic stimulus packages, if you will, that was given out in response to COVID, CARES Act, ARPA, and et cetera, that this bill was going to be something of the same nature, that it was going to be another economic stimulus package that would be given to the states for them to use with an infrastructure focus. And that's just not the case. What the bill was what we used to call in Senator Cochran's office, or everybody else's office, just an omnibus bill, where they put several different federal acts under one umbrella. And so the part of it that dealt with, or that we were interested in, was the part that dealt with the reauthorization of the Federal Highway Administration. So that's represented in the yellow on the right for the upcoming 5 years. And you will see the good news is it is an increase. It does go to $3.6 billion, which is $1 billion more than what we received the last 5-year authorization. About $300 million of that, though, is new money for new programs that deal with bridges, that deal with electric vehicle charging stations, that deal with ferry boats. And then the remaining 3.3 would be the regular money that would be made available for our projects that we normally would do through the normal course of action at the department. So you've got the $3.6 billion total, which is going to require a $765.8 million match from the state in order to get. So this is where I think a lot of people got confused. It was reported in different areas because of the way some of the information was coming from Washington, that the infrastructure bill was going to be handed down and Mississippi would get, I think it was like $4.7 billion. And a portion of that, of course, is the part under the bill that dealt with the broadband or may have dealt with some type of climate control elements. And then, of course, you had the 3.6 that deals with federal highway. But again, that was an economic stimulus package. These monies, as regard to federal highway, if I may, I want to take a minute to be sure that you're aware of how a project is led, because I think that that's something that is lost on several people. When the Transportation Commission lets construction projects, MDOT pays for that project 100% up front with state funds. And then assuming that we've done our homework, which most of the time our staff has always done their homework, we know that Federal Highways staff will sign off on it, and they agree that it's meeting their standards, they agree that it's meeting their guidelines, but as kind of a last check, we pay for the project 100% with our money. Federal Highway inspects that, and then they reimburse us for the portion that would normally be federally funded. So if it's an 80-20 match project, they would reimburse us on the back end that 80%. So that's the clearest example I can give you to where this $3.6 billion over 5 years is never going to come to Mississippi and sit in a bank account to be appropriated out. Now, but the good news is it is more money than what we had in the last 5-year appropriation. And that will take me to our budget, and you have that in your handout too. This is the same presentation that was given to the Legislative Budget Committee back in, I guess, October, wasn't it? The only thing that has changed on it is if you look on the first page under comparison of revenues, you've got a comparison of the last 3 fiscal years, or the last 2 and the upcoming one, where we asked under FY23, we projected that we would receive, based on our estimates, $599 million of federal funds that would be made available. With the new infrastructure program and the reauthorization of federal highway, we expect for FY23 for us to receive about $160 million extra for that year. So that you will see is an increase of $759 million in federal funds that we believe will be made available for us in the next fiscal year. Every other line throughout this budget presentation is exactly the same as what we had given to the elbow staff and everyone else, so nothing else is different. So this will reflect where we are now with the known funds that will be coming to the state. And so again, from the standpoint of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, we will see an increase of $160 million this first year in federal funds that can be used for projects with us. As I mentioned, I'm sorry.
If I may stop you right here, for the benefit of the subcommittee, in your request for this year, the amount of, in your request, the match funds that are needed for just this fiscal year, is it 38 million? Am I reading this correctly?
35, if you look.
35, okay.
Well, is that right? It's an average over the 5 years of 40 million. To be honest with you, I haven't just checked into looking at the specifics, but the middle line on the bottom part is extra. So you're right, 38.
The 38, okay, thank you.
Now, here's something that's worth pointing out to you. So the way that this budget is set up, that is not including any, we're not assuming anything extra. So it only shows the money we know we're going to get extra, which is 160 million. If we're not given, and I'm very appreciative of how cooperative the legislative leadership has been on both sides of the Capitol in expressing an interest in helping us with the match funds. But just for the sake of you knowing and for your situational awareness, the way the law was written, if we didn't have that assistance, we would be required to use the lottery money as a match. And right now, for you to know, the commission determined sometime back that they would use basically close to 100%. Most all of the lottery funds is being used to rehabilitate 2-lane highways around the state that normally, through the way the federal system goes, might be, I hate to use the term neglected, but maybe last on the list. And so as a result of them doing that, and as a result of the investment that you've made through the lottery funds, we've been able to rehabilitate around 1,600 miles around the state. So it's been very helpful. But we certainly would want to avoid having to take money from something that's doing that much positive work around the state and then use it in order to match these other funds. So that kind of covers most of what I would have to say about the budget from that standpoint, with one exception. I know that there, in conversations we've had, there's been an interest in looking through MDOT's appropriations budget and other areas to try to be sure that we could make a move away from diverting funds from the fuel tax that would normally be used by MDOT and work on our transportation system, that we're directed by the legislature to move that money and divert it to another agency. That would be a tremendous help to us. Not that the purposes that those monies are going to are unwarranted, but certainly I think it's a better use and a more intended use of the fuel tax to get it back towards the transportation system. There is one exception of a diversion that I think would be reasonable, and it's one that we have talked about before, with the move of the law enforcement from the Department of Transportation to DBS. There's a unified carrier registration fees that I believe I'm right that the motor carriers, when they used to be housed with the Public Service Commission, received, and when the legislature moved the motor carriers from the Public Service Commission to MDOT, we began receiving that, and it's depending on the year, could be anywhere from $3 to $7 million. Those are monies that we receive by virtue of receiving additional law enforcement. So with the law enforcement moving elsewhere, I certainly think it's reasonable for us to divert that money. But any other money would be fuel tax money, and I would be of the strong opinion that I would like for it to stay with us so we can put it to use within, our budget.
Do you have an idea for the committee, dollar amount of diversions that you're referencing that do go out on an annual basis?
Depending on how you total it up, you could be looking at anywhere from $15 to $25 million. And there are a lot of small ones. I know that some of the fuel tax goes to Department of Marine Resources and Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks that total around $9 million, I think it is. But within our appropriation bill itself, we have $650,000 a year that we give out to the Department of Agriculture for beaver control. We have money that's given to the Department of Development Authority, $800,000 a year to help pay for their employees at the welcome centers. And that's on top of the $3 million a year that we spend on maintenance and things like that of the welcome centers. So those are just examples of some of the funds that we certainly can get an exhaustive list to work through that, like I said, I'm certainly not saying that those services aren't needed and warranted and beneficial, but I support the idea that it might be best for those to be funded through the general fund of appropriation to those specific agencies, and allowing the fuel tax to remain within the Department of Transportation to be put towards transportation-related needs that the state would have. With that, I would like to close basically, and let me, before I get into this last thing, I do want to thank the legislature for the attention that you have given to the transportation needs. The Emergency Road and Bridge Program has been a tremendous success. As I mentioned earlier, I think the lottery funds that we're receiving have been put to very good use by the Commission, and it's making a difference. Those are the type of things the legislature can do that helps narrow the gap that we have on meeting the needs of the investment that the taxpayers have in the transportation system, and I appreciate that and would covet any other help or assistance that we could get in that direction. But with all the talk about the funding needs, I would like to give you my observation, having been back at the department for 7 months. With all the need for money, I don't think that's the biggest challenge that the department faces. I think our biggest challenge is with the recruitment and maintaining of staff. When I went to work for the commission back a little better than 20-something years ago, if you went around the 10th floor management or you looked at division heads, district engineers, a lot of those individuals had been with the department for an average of between 30 and 35 years. There was a great deal of institutional knowledge of how to do the work. They had been there, their careers had been there. Today, that number is probably half that. And it's mainly because, and I know in today's economy that every business is fighting the same thing, but over the years, we have, the gap between what we pay our employees and what is offered, not just in the private sector, but by the surrounding departments of transportation or by the Federal Highway Administration that has offices here in Mississippi, the gap has just become so tremendous that we're unable we're just bleeding employees. In the last year alone, just going back 12 months, we've lost 32 engineers. And so it's not just a problem of losing staff, but it's also the problem of having the salaries and the things necessary to be able to recruit others. I tell people that when I used to go to our service awards a long time ago, the people that would walk up to receive their 5-year pin most of the time looked like people that you would think had been out of school for 5 years. And I went to my first one here a few months ago as a director, and a lot of the people that came up to get their 5-year pin were as gray-headed as I am, which told me they were there for the benefits. But it's not just with the engineers. What I call our frontline workers, the people that are away from their families when hurricanes or tornadoes or other disasters like that are coming around the state, that are making sure the roadways stay open for emergency vehicles to be able to get through to the people that need that help. We are having trouble maintaining and recruiting those workers. Some of the starting pay prior to SEC Squared has been around $18,000 a year. And we lose a lot of them to local governments who can, not being under the personnel board, can add $1 or $2 equivalent to an hourly wage and steal the staff away from us. For the first time in a long time, we have counties around the state where there are no MDOT employees within those counties. And that's important to point out, because when any of you or your colleagues call with constituents that have a problem, whether that be a culvert that's stopped up or just fill in the blank, our floating crews now that are having to address that are now having to cover more of a geographic area, so it slowed down our ability and time to address the issues that may be reported to us. When the 87 4-lane program was passed 30-something years ago, a lot of the pre-construction work was done in-house by the Department of Transportation. If we were given a program like that today, we would not be able to do that inside. We would have to go outside to use consultants and others to help with that type of work. And from what I can tell, that's at a cost to the taxpayer of about 3 to 1 to what we could have done it on the inside. So we're working on the plan, and I want to thank the Personnel Board and the legislature with what was done with SEC Square, because we do have a great number of employees that are going to be helped by that. But the problem that we ran into is most of the employees are the kind that were really having trouble maintaining and recruiting were already at market value in their pay. And so SEC Square is not adding a penny to them. In some cases, one, you know, I saw was I think was going to get a $6 raise, and I told somebody that's just enough to make you mad, you know, to get a $6 a year raise. But we're putting together a plan that will continue to talk with the legislative leadership and elbow as well as the Personnel Board, that I believe if I can just be given the authority, I'm not asking for the funds and all that. If we can correct the diversions and stuff like that, I don't need the extra money for this. If I can just have the authority to show you our plan of how we can bring those salaries back in line with the surrounding states and with Federal Highway, I believe that we can begin the process of recruiting back the type of individuals that would build a strong agency that can truly meet the mission of the department. Because it's my opinion that if we had all the money in the world, at the end of the day, it's not going to do us any good if I don't have a team with which to put it out. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you I believe that we're at a crisis level on that. In the years to come, you're going to see the cost being spent on consultants continue to rise. And I think for a fraction of that, we could put the money back into the employees of the department and be able to maintain our staff and be able to recruit others. I can't tell you enough of the respect that I've had for the men and women that make up the department. Just here a few months ago, we had one of our employees brought before the commission to be commended for delivering a baby on the side of the road. I would still be laying out there on the side of the road if faced with having to do something like that, but they're doing more than patching potholes. And I really believe that this is something that you could help us with tremendously simply by approving a plan and giving us the authority to implement it. So I won't rattle on any more with that, but Madam Chairman, that concludes what I have to say, but I've got people here that are a lot smarter than I am that can answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I'd now like any committee members that have questions to, questions? Senator Butler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brad, what's on the keys back on the block? I'm the new kid back on the block, but I know a little bit about the block. But you brought up the 87 four-lane highway legislation that was passed back then. And I know for a fact at that time, 24 highway was on there. And I know this may not have anything to do with our budget here, but it's not anymore. Do you know why? I know you knew too, but do you know why that was pulled off of there?
I'd have to check, sir, and I'm embarrassed to tell you I didn't bring, the one thing I don't have in this folder is the capacity list of projects. But when I get back to the office, I will check and call you back this afternoon.
That's important. I mean, I just don't understand how it was on there in 87, then it was pulled off. So I kind of like to know, you know, why it was pulled off, and of course what we need to do to get it back on there. Okay, sure. That's very, very important to us down in Southwest Mississippi. Another question, and again, Madam Chairman, this may not have nothing to do with the budget hearing, but you know the population switch, you know, it's moving around in the state. And how many district officers we have? 6, 7? 6. All right, 6. Would that affect those district offices in areas maybe lost a lot of population? Does that make you kind of understand what I'm?
Yeah, I mean, only from the sense maybe. What we look at is where the traffic is. I mean, we follow that data, and then of course where the footprint of the transportation system is. That footprint's not changing.
Okay.
You know, wherever the people go, you're still going to have the roads that exist are there. So what we primarily look at or encourage our elected leaders to look at is trying to invest the money wisely, and we feel like that's, or I feel like that's best and most wisely spent where the data would direct you, which, may touch on some of what you've seen, but I don't know that the population shifts itself have had any type of impact.
Okay, and again, that question was asked to me just last night, and I didn't know I was gonna have the meeting today, so that's why I asked, because some people are concerned about those district officers, of course, staying in their areas, if you will.
Right, right. Right now, there's no plans to move anything like that. Again, what I would like to do, if I had a magic wand to wave, would be able to rectify the imbalance that we have with our pay scale, to be able to fill, to maintain what we've got, but to be able to fill some of the vacancies we've got, to be able to put employees back into the areas where we've lost them, to be able to better address the needs of the areas.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Butler, questions?
Madam Chairman, I would suggest that we review their request and call them back.
That'd be fine. That's usually what we do anyway, and I welcome you to give any input you'd like to see, additional questions asked, or anything that we can do to answer your individual questions.
And we're putting this thing together in phases, so I can get with you whenever you'd like and look at the first phases. We're wrapping up some of the latter parts, but it would certainly give you an indication of that, and then you can kind of tell me from there what you think the best path forward would be.
Sure, in the subcommittee, and I can get with you on an individual basis, if they decide that they maybe would want to have a second meeting prior to the bill being final, I'm open to do that for any of you that may feel comfortable with that, because I know it is a lot this time. We have some extra work to do, so
Well,
we'll
obviously,
probably meet again.
I'm at your disposal whenever you need me.
Thank you. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
He said Highway 24, right?
Yeah, I think I can get that. I think the legislation, when it gets changed, some of them got dropped off.
Like in Vision 21, maybe, or...
Right, right. They had some iterations between the original one and Vision 20.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started on the next hearing. I believe we're doing this by Zoom. This is the Tenn-Tom Waterway District Development Authority. I think Carlos has us set up. There we go. Good afternoon. You may have your microphone muted. Good afternoon. Can you hear us? We're not able to hear you. Would you check to be sure your microphone is not on mute, please? Okay, let's try it again. Good afternoon. Let's see if we can hear you. We can see your mouth moving, but we don't hear anything. Carlos, help us out. Do you know? You think it's on his side? Okay. Let's try that. Would you mind maybe trying to dial in by phone? And we'll keep the link open and wait on you for just a few minutes to see if you can dial in. Christy, could we maybe resend the link and be sure the phone number is on there? I'm sure it was on the email that you sent. I know that it probably was. That would be great. Thank you. Okay. Okay, Mr. Mays, we've got you now. Good afternoon. That's no problem. We appreciate you being flexible and dialing in for us. We were just looking over your budget request, and we all have the information here in front of us, so we'll allow you to go ahead and explain that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. My name is Mitch Bates. I'm the administrator for the Tenn-Tom Waterway development. Been here for since 2016. This year we have requested $215,000, which would be a significant increase. When I first started with the authority, we were receiving less than around $200,000 a year.
Okay, Mr. Mays, thank you for the information. I do have a question about the difference in the travel that you're requesting from, I think it was maybe $1,800 the previous year up to $23,000 or so. I assume that's maybe due to COVID and you were not able to travel as normal?
Yes, ma'am. We typically go to Washington DC, 4 and 5 times a year to work with our federal officials. And please keep in mind, we're working with our federal elected officials from 4 different states. We're not always able to catch them all at the same time. Then, of course, when we travel to other states as well, meeting with legislative delegations in each state house. For instance, I'll be going to Branning, Kentucky sometime this year, and also Montgomery, and then, of course, Nashville to meet with state elected officials discussing what looks like a move with you here today on our budget request.
And I think that's certainly reasonable. Are there any questions from any of the subcommittee members? And I'm not seeing any questions. Well, Mr. Mays, we thank you for your time. Thank you for dialing on to present the budget. We will take the information under advisement. If there are follow-up questions, we'll be in touch with you.
Yes, ma'am, and thank you and the committee for your time.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to Tombigbee River Valley Water Supply District. Hello, gentlemen. Come right on over, please. Thank you for allowing us to shift the time a little bit on your hearing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Who will be presenting? Mr. Stevens, will you be presenting?
Actually, our new director, as of 10 months ago, Drew Robertson.
Mr. Robertson, okay.
So, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you.
Distinguished members, we appreciate you giving us an opportunity. I'm Drew Robertson, I'm the Executive Director of Tombigbee.
Would you speak into the microphone? I think we may be on the YouTube channel for those that are interested. And you'll just need to press the button so it becomes green. Thank you.
Tess, thank you. Madam Chair, once again, distinguished members, thank you. I'm Drew Robertson. I'm the Executive Director of the Tombigbee River Valley Water Management District. And we're bringing before you today our requested budget for FY 2023. We've been working exclusively with the LBO and also State Personnel Board. There was a modest delta between what was requested and what was recommended specific to covering salaries. And so to simplify our request today, we're asking that the full original request be funded so that we can cover salaries and fringe. And this is some of the SEC2 moves and some of the 3%. So it was not a very large amount, but we do want to make sure that we were able to cover that shortfall. And we have, there is a sheet on the very back of the handout I gave you, not to bore you with the math, but we tried to do some of the analytics just so you could see in red what the shortfall was. And as you're turning to that, if it's helpful, the requested amount was 1,266,186, and we were recommended for 1,236,81. And that was the only area that was going, we had a little bit of concern trying to make sure we could cover salary and fringe. So what we're bringing for you today is asking if the requested amount could be funded.
So the difference that you're requesting, if I understood you correctly, was as a result of what was recommended under SEC squared? Is that, in other words, there were, I guess you had employees that maybe did not, their salaries were not in alignment with the new system, and so you were attempting to bring those up? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And we have, there are some that were at minimum, some that were not at minimum. So it's a little helter-skelter trying to make it that cut and dry. But at the end of the day, we were around 39,000 short of being able to fulfill the current pay scale, which includes the 3%.
Okay.
And so the number that we originally asked for also gives us very modest buffer so that over the next 18 months, if we did have somebody who was able to get a slight raise, we would have some money to cover that.
Okay. And just for the committee's benefit, I know I was able to visit with you all over the summer and get to know you a little bit and see sort of how you operate. How many counties participate?
We have 13 counties that participate right now.
Okay.
And there's a total of 17 in the initial charter that actually could participate, but we have 13 now.
Okay. And you have how many employees?
We have 16 employees, and we have one pen that's a vacancy.
Okay. Any questions by any committee members? Senator Butler, do you have any questions? Anything else you'd like to add?
No, listen, thank you
Okay.
for making that easy. I know you've got a lot on the docket, but, and again, it sounds like lip service, but it's genuine. William and Deborah and LBO, I mean, they're helping us to step through some of the complexities here. So thank you for allowing us to be a good steward of the money and continue to do good things for our tax base.
We appreciate what you do, and as we work on your budget, if we have follow-up questions, we'll be in touch with you for additional information.
Madam Chair, as you referenced, we were honored to have you join us back in the summer, and that invitation is open to anyone on this committee. We're somewhat of a unicorn. There's not a lot of agencies like us, and it's I think Senator Branning would attest, you almost need to see what we do to truly be able to understand it.
It was helpful. I was impressed, and I appreciate you taking time to sort of show me what you do. So I feel really good about your request and what you brought forward. But as you know, if I have questions as we get a little deeper in the weeds, we may reach out to you once more.
Certainly.
On
Thank
behalf
you very
of our
much.
board, thank you all for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.